Good afternoon, students. Today we shall learn a new poem which will remind us and at the same time will teach us that a few vices are sufficient to darken many virtues. It means a prejudice or a negative action of a man will always cover up his positive actions and will lead him towards destruction. We are going to learn this in the poem The Cold Within. Well, now I shall begin with the background of the poem. The Cold Within was written by James Patrick Kinney, an American poet in the 1960s. Initially, this poem was rejected for being too controversial. The poem was later read out at the council meeting of all religions and it gradually began to gain popularity. We shall read through the 8 stanzas of the poem, narrating the story of 6 humans who allow their vices or sins to dictate their actions, ultimately leading to their physical and spiritual death. Now, let's begin with the poem. 6 humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. The poem here is beginning on a dramatic note where we are taken into the midst of the actions, showing us that 6 humans were trapped in a place which was gloomy and severely cold. The word happenstance means an event that was not accidental but prearranged. Now here in the poem it seemed as if the 6 humans were trapped by chance or accident, but the case was not so. In fact, the Creator or the universal power had so arranged it. Now you may raise a question. Why did the poet use humans and not people or persons or men or women? We can assume the answer to this question as the poet is wishing to convey that we, the humans, are all equal in the eyes of the Creator. It's the humans who discriminate against each other. The Creator does not do so. Next, each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story is told. The poet continued to tell, each one of the 6 humans had a stick of wood with him or her. Now, stanza 2 of the poem. Their dying fire in need of logs, but the first one held hers back. You will find the people who were trapped in that gloomy and severely cold place. To keep themselves warm, they started a fire with whatever they could find. But soon the fire started to die out. At this point, it was necessary to add more logs to the fire in order to fuel it and keep it alive. But the first human, a woman, she held her log of wood back and refused to put it into the fire. Next, 4 of the faces round the fire she noticed one was black. Now, why did this woman refuse to put her log of wood into the fire? Because in the group she saw a black man. Now, this woman, she could not overcome the sin of racial prejudice and could not bear to see the black man benefit due to her contribution. So, she held her log of wood back. Now, let's begin with stanza 3. The next man looking across the way saw one not of his church. Cross the way means across or around the fire, and not of his church, it means not of the same religion. So here we find it was the turn of the next human, a man. He looked across at the people sitting around the fire. Among them, he saw a person who did not belong to the same religion as him. Next, and could not bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. This man, he too refused to give his log of birch wood into the fire. This is because immediately on seeing that other man not belonging to the same religion, he became intolerant. He could not overcome his narrow-mindedness and religious intolerance, and thus he too held back his log of wood. Next, stanza 4. The third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. So, now it's the turn of the third man. He was wearing tattered clothes, which suggested that he was a poor man. He saw among them was a rich man, and at once he tightened his coat and pulled it closer. Here hitch means tighten or pull it closer. Next, why should his log be put to use to warm the idle rich? The poor man thought, why should he contribute his log of wood to the fire that would give warmth to the rich man? He viewed the rich man to be lazy, who never worked hard and only exploited the poor. He was filled with bitterness and envy, and since he could not overcome these feelings, the poor man too refused to give up his log of wood into the fire. Stanza 5. The rich just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store. In store means the wealth that the rich man had gathered or accumulated. In the first two lines, we see that the rich man was sitting there thinking about all the wealth that he had gathered. He wondered how he had earned them through his consistent effort. So, he did not want to waste it or fritter it away. Next two lines, and how to keep what he earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. The rich man kept on thinking on how he could safeguard his wealth from that poor person. Now, this rich man viewed the poor person as lazy, aimless, a person who had no goals and no focus. The rich man could not give up his prejudice, his greed and stinginess. He was a rich man, he had more than enough, but he could not bring himself to share even a bit of it. Thus, the rich man also did not give up his log of wood. Now, stanza 6. The black man's face bespoke revenge as the fire passed from his sight. The fire was almost on the verge of dying out now. The black man saw the dying fire, but it was very clear from his face that even at this critical situation, he wanted revenge for the mistreatments he had suffered at the hands of the white people. Next two lines. For all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. The black man's stick of wood had the potential to revive the fire and save everyone's life, but he failed to see the potential. He was so blinded by hatred and the thirst for revenge that he only thought of using his stick to hurt the white man. Stanza 7. The last man of this forlorn group did not accept for gain. Now it was the turn of the last man of this forlorn group. Now look at the word forlorn. Forlorn means sad and lonely. This group was a group of 6 humans, but still forlorn, sad and lonely. The last man in the group never did anything without thinking of his own benefit or profit. Here, not means nothing. Next two lines. Giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. This last man had an extremely materialistic, transactional approach. He played the game of life by giving only to those who gave him in return. He had no generosity or largeness of heart. He saw the others were not willing to give up their logs. Therefore, he too refused to give up his log and save the dying fire. Now, stanza 8. Their logs held tight in death's still hands was proof of human sin. Ultimately, the fire died out, and all the 6 humans were frozen to death. Even though they lay still and dead, they kept holding on to their logs tightly. This was the proof of their sins, their prejudices, bitterness, hatred, negative thoughts. They had the chance to give up their sins into the fire of enlightenment, but they did not do so. In the next two lines, they did not die from the cold without. They died from the cold within. Their death was not caused by the cold without. That is, the 6 humans died not due to the severe climatic conditions prevailing outside. Their death was caused by the cold within, the cold in their hearts, that is, lack of warmth, presence of selfishness, and the inability to reach out to others. By holding on to their sins, they not only died physically but also spiritually. Now, let me discuss the figures of speech used in the poem. By now, you are all acquainted with the literary devices named personification, metaphor, alliteration. In this particular poem, you will learn the usage of another figure of speech called oxymoron. We'll come to it soon, but before that, let me discuss personification and metaphor once more. Personification, you know, it's a literary device where inanimate objects and abstract notions are spoken of as having human attributes or qualities. Like in this poem, death is personified. That is, death is given a human attribute of having hands. When the poet says, death's still hands. Next figure of speech, metaphor. It is a device used in an imaginative way to show that somebody or something has the same qualities as another thing. Like here, you will find log of wood. Log of wood is a metaphor for sin. Fire. Fire is a metaphor for enlightenment. Cold within, it's a metaphor for lack of warmth. Now, let me discuss alliteration with you. Alliteration, you have already learned, it's a literary device where a series of words begin with the same consonant sound. Now follow the lines from the poem and look up at the words marked with the red color. 6 humans trapped by happenstance. Humans, happenstance. Series of words starting with the same consonant sound. H. Bleak and bitter. Again, B. The consonant sound B. But the first one held hers back. Series of words with the same consonant sound, her, held hers. For of the faces round the fire, for faces fire. Series of words beginning with the same consonant sound, fur. Black man's face bespoke revenge. Black bespoke. Again a series of words with the same consonant sound, b. For all he saw in his stick of wood, saw, stick, having the same consonant sound, sir. They did not die from the cold within. Did, die, again in a series starting with the same consonant sound, d. Well, I told you a moment earlier that I'll be discussing a new figure of speech used in this poem. The new figure of speech is oxymoron. It is a literary device that shows a pair of contradictory terms. In this poem, you will find the contradictory terms used is forlorn group. This phrase is ironical. You look, it's a group of 6 people. But still the group is a lonely one. So students, Hope you have all understood the poem. Thank you.